What if your path to sobriety also became your path to freedom? Hi there, I'm Chris with a K, and welcome back to This Week in Queer History, where we celebrate queer moments and icons that I wish I had known about as a young gay kid growing up in conservative America. Imagine finding a true belonging and a path to healing when the world around you offered only judgment. For so many queer people, their journey to sobriety wasn't just about overcoming addiction. It was about forging a family, a haven, a legacy of strength. So prepare to be moved by a story of profound resilience and radical love.
This week in queer history, stories told with love and glee.
Today we're going to explore a chapter of queer history that's both painful and inspiring. The creation of Queer Alcoholics Anonymous, or it's sometimes called Gay AA, and how it popped up in the earlier years. It's going to be a story about people who were told that we don't talk about that here, but then they decided to speak up anyway. It's about secret meetings in basements and living rooms, laughter that echoed through church halls where queer people often weren't accepted, and how one of the most conservative spiritual programs in America became, well, slowly and awkwardly and beautifully, a sanctuary for LGBTQ people to recover. So grab a cup of caffeinated coffee or decaf if you prefer and settle in, because we're going to be covering from the 1930s all the way up to today's rainbow-colored recovery. So let's rewind to 1935, the founding year of Alcoholics Anonymous. Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob Smith met in Akron, Ohio, and sparked a global recovery movement, which was simple and radical in its premise. One alcoholic helping another could do what medicine, religion, and willpower alone could not. The 12 steps and 12 traditions formed a spiritual, not religious necessarily, framework that welcomed solutions over shame. And in principle, AA was open to everyone. Tradition 3 says, the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. It was a promise of belonging. But promises are only as strong as the people that keep them. In the 1940s and 50s, queer alcoholics lived in a world that condemned not only their drinking, but their existence. Homosexuality was treated as an illness or a crime. Bars were raided, people lost their jobs and families. Early AA meetings mirrored the era's prejudice. We don't talk about sex, some would say. And they meant, don't make us feel uncomfortable. Marty Mann, AA's first prominent sober woman and a public health pioneer, was also a lesbian. Her big book story, Women Suffer Too, helped countless people, even as her queerness was erased from the narrative for decades. Imagine saving lives at the cost of your own truth. And queer alcoholics were fighting two battles at once, the bottle and the world. And it's no wonder that many turned to substances promising relief from enforced loneliness. Even inside AA, they were often told to be quiet about who they were. The message landed, you can be sick with us, but just not yourself with us. But AA's structure quietly planted seeds of inclusion. Tradition 4 grants each group autonomy, so as long as the traditions are respected, if you can't find a meeting where you feel safe, you can start one yourself. That little valve of freedom would become the opening for queer AA. By the 1960s, the culture was shifting. Civil rights, women's liberation, the sexual revolution. Queer people were done hiding, even in recovery. And imagine it, San Francisco or New York in that time period, there were plenty of bars, but few safe sanctuaries. In AA rooms, slogans like honesty, open-mindedness, willingness, could feel hollow when honesty was risking ostracism. So people met quietly at home. They pulled chairs into circles, poured coffee, and said, sometimes for the first time, I'm gay and I'm an alcoholic. In 1965, that was revolutionary. It's 1967, and the first documented gay AA meeting was held at an Episcopalian church on Fell Street in San Francisco. Members weren't trying to be activists. They were trying to stay sober without disguises. They initially introduced themselves as gay alcoholics until someone asked, what if we just say alcoholic? Isn't that enough? And that paradox, wanting to belong in AA without pretending to be straight, defined the early years. In Washington, D.C., 2 gay men and 2 lesbians began meeting privately in December 1971. Within 6 months, they moved into the church basement and opened the doors. They called their group Lambda. And by 1985, that seed had grown into 15 groups with more than 40 weekly meetings. Sobriety had become a movement. Stonewall in 1969 transformed the politics and the psychology of coming out. For queer alcoholics, it proved secrecy could destroy you and honesty could save you. Post-Stonewall, more LGBTQ people entered AA rooms unapologetically, but acceptance lagged. Some groups resisted, claiming gay members would disrupt the group conscience. And queer AA grew as an act of self-preservation, not separation. It was a way to live the AA program as themselves. In the early 1970s, lesbian and gay members began organizing openly. In DC, Nancy T. helped publish a slim staple pamphlet, The Homosexual Alcoholic, AA's message of hope to gay men and women. It was part manifesto, part directory, and completely brave. It listed LGBTQ affirming meetings and testimonies, and it traveled hand to hand like contraband hope. If you were isolated and thought that AA isn't for people like me, this pamphlet said, "We're here, keep coming back." AA avoids politics, but the question of listing gay meetings sparked real controversy at the General Service Conference in the 1970s. Did identifying bisexuality violate unity, or did inclusion strengthen it? Debate raged for 2 years. One delegate recalled hearing painful, hostile language. A non-alcoholic trustee finally stood up and said, "We didn't blink at listing women's groups. Why should this be any different?" In 1974, the motion passed overwhelmingly, with only 2 no votes. Gay and lesbian meetings would be officially listed. It was one line in a directory. It became a lighthouse. Momentum followed. At the 1975 Denver International AA Convention, a gay and lesbian hospitality suite overflowed. In 1976, San Francisco hosted the first Western Roundup, Living Sober. About 200 people came, gay men, lesbians, allies, a few curious straight members who wanted to dance sober in the Castro. It became an annual tradition that still thrives today, and this is proof that recovery can be joyful. As one attendee said, "We laughed harder than we ever did drunk." And queer AA developed its own warmth and humor. Meetings ended with the serenity prayer and hugs, numbers exchanged, coffee dates made. Jokes lightened the work, and beneath the laughter was purpose. Many members had already lost friends to addiction and soon to AIDS. Staying sober was survival and resistance. But criticisms came. Some accused queer meetings of dividing the fellowship, but their response was simple. We didn't leave AA. We just made a room big enough for all of us. By 1981, queer AA had grown too big to remain invisible. At Washington, D.C.'s Capitol Roundup, members founded the International Advisory Council for Homosexual Men and Women in AA, IAC, later known as GAL AA. Its mission to ensure that no one seeking sobriety feels alone because of who they are. Directories, events, and hospitality suites at international AA conventions, including an official sanctioned gay meeting in 1980 New Orleans, brought coherence to scattered courage. In a year when AIDS was beginning to whisper and politics veered very conservative, a gay AA meeting inside the mainstream AA was a radical hope in folding chairs. But then the ground shifted. AIDS tore through the queer community. Lovers became caregivers, obituaries became weekly rituals, and queer AA meetings became holy sanctuaries. Candlelight became common, names spoken, grief shared, cravings and terror named without flinching. One member, Gary from St. Louis, lost his sponsor after coming out. Instead of drinking, he found a gay meeting and a gay sponsor again, and then started the candlelight meetings himself. Pain turned into purpose. One day at a time acquired new weight when tomorrow wasn't guaranteed, yet joy endured. Sober birthdays, fierce hugs, gallows humor. When the world treated queer lives as disposable, those rooms insisted, you matter. Please stay. By 1985, queer AA thrived even amid devastation. DC alone had 15 groups and 40-plus meetings. San Francisco's Western Roundup drew hundreds. Rooms were packed to standing room only. It remained largely underground, a sacred web of chosen family and truth many carried. AA saved my life twice, from the bottle and from the loneliness. And humor helped too. My higher power wears heels. If God loves everyone, she's clearly a lesbian. We don't do shots, we do steps. Not irreverence, but resilience. As only a queer person knows. And activism and recovery intertwined. Many marched with ACT UP by day and held hands at meetings by night. Spirituality looked like compassion in motion. Gal AA, recognized by AA's General Service Office, became a central contact. It collected stories, preserved timelines, and coordinated LGBTQ hospitality at conventions. Across the Atlantic, Great Britain listed its first gay group by 1988 and hosted its first lesbian and gay AA convention. The circle widened. I can imagine folding chairs in a church hall, candlelight flickering, a trembling voice finding words, laughter breaking through tears, hands joined for the serenity prayer. Those meetings weren't romantic. They were necessary. People needed connection like oxygen, and when society withheld it, they built it. Queer AA's legacy is more than sobriety, it's solidarity. For many, healing and pride became the same journey. If the 1980s were about survival, the 1990s were about rebuilding. Pride flags returned to celebration as new medications extended lives. Recovery mirrored that arc. The movement born in crisis matured into a thriving ecosystem. By the early 1990s, gay AA felt too narrow of a term. Lesbians, bisexuals, and transgender people had been present from the very beginning, but visibility lagged. And so the language evolved. LGBTQ meetings, rainbow meetings, and intergroup networks in cities like LA, San Francisco, New York, and Chicago coordinated outreach and newcomer support. The principle stayed the same: carry the message to the alcoholic who still suffers, and so the scope widened. The council incorporated in 1991 as a Canadian nonprofit and later formalized the name GAL AA, Gays and Lesbians in Alcoholics Anonymous. And even as the acronym later felt limited, its mission expanded. GAL AA became historian as much as a hub, publishing newsletters, directories, and timelines in a fellowship that does not collect demographic data. Without it, much of queer recovery's records would have vanished. As the immediate AIDS crisis receded, grief remained, along with wisdom. Veterans of the darkest years sponsored a new generation who hadn't lived through the AIDS crisis firsthand, but still needed connection. Meetings added memorial nights, hosted open topic discussions about identity, family, and love. One gay member said, "I thought that sobriety would be boring, but it became the adventure of becoming myself." But this progress wasn't linear. Back in 1986, at a Texas intergroup, more than 300 people debated listing a transgender meeting. Some feared it would confuse the newcomer. Others answered the newcomer is already confused. That's why they're here. And the vote passed. By the 2000s, trans inclusion was expected. At the 2005 International AA Convention in Toronto, a workshop titled Accessing AA as People of Transgender Experience made the main program. That's a long way from rooms where gay couldn't even be spoken. And then AA's Grapevine began printing more openly queer stories. In 2008, Out of the Woods traced a lesbian member's journey towards sobriety and self-acceptance. In 2021, The Need to Identify by a non-binary member, ENG, captured the power of LGBTQ meetings. Finding people who identified as I did created a revitalizing network of support. AA World Services now publishes LGBTQ Alcoholics in AA, a pamphlet that affirms difference without abandoning universality. By the 2000s, technology transformed recovery. Online meetings became lifelines for queer people in rural and conservative areas. Anonymity, once the province of church basements, found a second home on Zoom. Gal AA's online directories listed hundreds of LGBTQ affirming meetings worldwide, with names like the Rainbow Room and Lavender Group. It was a global fellowship with one desire to stop drinking and many paths to belonging. Other fellowships like NA and Al-Anon embraced LGBTQ-specific meetings. Community centers hosted sober events, dance nights, pride gatherings, drag shows without alcohol or substances. The message spread: queer joy doesn't need intoxication to be powerful. By 2013, Gal AA explicitly welcomed bisexual, transgender, queer, and questioning members. In 2016, a statement of inclusion distilled it down to, "We welcome all people, regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity, who seek the spiritual solution found in Alcoholics Anonymous." Today, Gal AA plans multiple queer-focused events for the 2025 AA International Convention in Vancouver, a journey from hidden meetings in 1967 to the global stages in under 60 years. And Queer AA didn't ask permission, it created spaces. The steps weren't rewritten, they were reclaimed. Step 1, admitting powerlessness, including shedding internalized shame. Step 3 often meant releasing the belief that God hated you. Step 12, carrying the message, became an outreach without apology. As historian Jeremy Lankford noted, gay AA allowed gay men and lesbians to meet others who shared the same experiences while maintaining the privacy expected of AA, a sanctuary within a sanctuary. Bias still appears and some literature still feels dated. In certain regions, LGBTQ meetings struggle with visibility. Debates persist about whether specialized meetings fragment the unity. The counterpoint is the third tradition. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. Inclusion has always strengthened AA's unity by widening the circle. And today, queer sobriety is vibrant and visible. Social feeds brim with sober LGBTQ creators. Sober pride, events flourish, queer venues experiment with alcohol-free nights. Where life once revolved around bars and drinking, many now are finding connection through community events like book clubs or hikes, and as always, meetings. The pioneers of queer AA made these choices possible. Addiction isolates, shame isolates, and connection heals. Queer AA understood that the work wasn't just abstaining, it was belonging. Healing didn't just require hiding, it often began when hiding stopped. And addiction is sad, it's hard, and it is painful. There aren't words big enough to describe how it isolates people and convinces them that connection, the thing they need the most, is out of reach. And I personally have seen it 3 times up close. First, with a family member who'd become addicted to meth and lost everything. The laughter, the spark, and the reliability is all buried beneath the weight of that addiction. It reshaped every relationship in our family, and I still hold them so dear, but the love now holds a lot of longing. And second, I had a relationship with someone who was an alcoholic. I was young, idealistic, and so codependent. I thought that love could fix it all. If I just managed it, it would all be better. But that didn't work. Therapy and Al-Anon taught me to draw boundaries, to separate compassion from enabling. It was brutal, but so necessary. And most recently, a friend, a bright, beautiful, and big-hearted human being, has relapsed on meth. And I'm watching that spiral up close. The shame, the sadness, the wanting help, but pushing it away. And I'm reminded that substances don't just destroy by themselves. It's the disconnection that does the heaviest damage. The addiction offers this counterfeit connection and leaves the abuser lonelier than before. That's why the history of queer AA hits me so hard. For many, addiction wasn't only about numbing pain. It was about trying to fill the void left when your family or your religion or society said that you don't belong as you are. And if you grew up like I did in a very conservative background with limited examples of acceptance, you risk everything, your family, your friends, your community, if you tell the truth. So you look somewhere else to belong. And often that somewhere else is bars and parties. And I love a night out or a drag brunch as much as anyone, but when alcohol becomes the glue of the community, the cost gets so high. We don't use because we love chaos. We use because we crave connection, and we get tricked into thinking it only exists with a drink in our hand. But queer AA replaces the false connection of intoxication with the real connection of community. Sobriety becomes recovery, not deprivation. You can laugh, you can dance, you can fall in love, you can feel everything and not need a substance to survive it. I've watched people in recovery get their light back, and I've seen the healing ripples spread outward. Friendships are mended, families are united, and lives are rebuilt. That's what queer AA represents. It's a community that heals what shame breaks. As a broader queer community, I hope we keep creating spaces built on connection and not on consumption. Places that we can talk at, play, we can move, we can create without needing a chemical bridge. Imagine a party where people laugh so hard they forget to check their phones. Imagine gatherings that bind us with conversation rather than substances. And we're seeing it already. Sober pride, queer hiking groups, daytime dance parties. It's a new vision of queer joy. No hangovers, we have present eyes, and there are genuine connections. But until that shift fully lands, I'm grateful for AA and for the people who opened church basements, passed around pamphlets, and stood in meetings saying, I am gay and I am an alcoholic. At a time when both words carried heavy shame. They didn't just save themselves, they saved countless others. And they proved you can be sober and still shine, lose everything and rebuild brighter. Come home to yourself, one meeting at a time. And maybe that's the miracle of queer AA. Healing doesn't require perfection, just connection. If this story moved you at all, or if you've seen the power of queer AA meetings change lives, please drop a comment down below. I love to read them and I reply to all of them. And if you want to keep exploring more queer courage, check out this video popping up right over here. And you can also check out what icons and events happened on your birthday by going to myqueerbirthday.com. The link is down in the description below. Until next time, stay strong, stay bold, and keep making history.